So for making the ohagi, then we need mochi rice along with some regular rice. And then you just mix those in a pot. You clean the rice, of course, with water 3 or 4 times, and then you place it in the rice cooker on about an hour. Then for the Anko beans or the red beans, then we need to wash them thoroughly, and then we put them in a pot with 600 milliliters of water. And when it starts to boil, then we add an extra 200 milliliters and let that boil. And then while we wait for that to boil, then we can do some calligraphy. We are writing Buncho-chin, which basically is the name of the lanterns that are used for Obon festival and can be found in Nara during the Obon festival, at least last year. And Nara is very famous for deers and history. And then we strain it after boiling it, and then we put it back into a clean pot again with 800 milliliters of water. Bring that up to a boil yet again, and then pour in about 200 milliliters of water 4 times every time it comes up to a boil. And then once you're done with that, then we drain it again. And then this time, then run it through some cold water to get the beans clean from the dirty water. Back into the pot. With 800 milliliters of water again, bring that up to a boil and then let it simmer for 30 to 40 minutes. If there's some foam coming up on top, then just remove that, as that has a little bit of a bitter flavor to it. And then once it's boiled, then you can test by pressing on a bean, and if it falls apart without any pressure, then we can continue to the next step, which requires us to have a nice sheet of baking paper that we've cut like this, so it exactly fits the pot, if you know how to cut and isn't like me. Yeah, so it doesn't fit for me, but it kind of fits in the pot when you press it down a little bit. But it's basically just to keep the beans from going up to the surface, so they all boil at the same speed. Then we drain it after 30 to 40 minutes with a lid on. And then we put it back into a boil yet again. This time we're not boiling it actually, we're putting in sugar and then stir it around on low to medium heat until the sugar is completely absorbed into the beans. And then we can add the rest of the sugar and stir that around. And then once the water is all evaporated from the beans, then use a pinch of salt, get that into the beans, and then we're pretty much done with the paste basically. Then it just needs to go out and cool down on a tray. And while it cools down, then we can go over to the mochi rice. And with the mochi rice, then you can just stamp it with a rolling pin and stamp it until you get this very sticky feeling from the rice, but you don't go as far so you can't see the grains anymore, so you have like this halfway mochi, halfway rice feeling to it still. And then you take it out of the bowl, and then you can roll it once you've covered your hands in water to a small bowl, and then make a lot of those. And then with the Anko, that is now cooled down, then we can make a bowl that is about 30% larger than the mochi rice bowl. Then you can squeeze it out in your hand. Put in the mochi rice and then cover it with this Anko paste. And then seal the bottom by pressing in the mochi rice and getting the Anko surrounded completely. And then set aside. And then that's done. Then what you can do is you can also do a kinako version, so soybean powder mixed with sugar instead of the Anko paste, if you want to do that, or if you run out of Anko paste.
So we finished the Ohagi and we have made a kinako and an Anko version. Of course you don't need to make a kinako version, but the Anko version is definitely the traditional version. And today we will be eating using kuro mochi, which basically is a traditional Japanese tool for eating sweets. You can of course use a small fork or chopsticks or your hands for that matter, but this is the traditional way. And it is super sweet, so all Japanese sweets are usually eaten with tea next to it. So the bitterness of the tea supplements the sweetness of the sweets. But let's try the Anko first. And as the Japanese say it, itadakimasu. The Anko version is super sweet, but as again, it matches perfectly with tea if you drink tea. But like you have the bounciness or the mushiness of the mochi rice. Yeah, but let's try the kinako version as well. So the kinako version is a lot more like the mochi rice that is centered in the on the palate. It tastes a little bit more like risengrød in Denmark, I would say, because of the mushiness of the rice. So that is pretty cool. So it's not as sweet as the Anko version, which is surrounded by sweetness basically, where this is a bit more thin layer of sugar with kinako. So the bean powder basically, right? Soybean powder. But it is very nice. Yes. Yes, so I just forgot to mention that the very last dish of this season, Obon, is plain dango. So like we made last time, then just plain dango without the sauce, and then they're stacked up in a pyramid as an offering to your ancestors, and then the ancestors are able to bring that home as a souvenir or as an omiyaki in Japanese, and then they can eat that as their favorite seasoning when they get home to heaven or wherever. That's the idea at least. So if you haven't already watched the previous movie, then the link will be up here, and I will see you in there. Vi ses!